Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. As mentioned, my name is Colin Tarbert, and I serve as President and CEO of the Baltimore Development Corporation. The Baltimore Development Corporation is the city's economic development agency. We are proud to partner with M&T Bank to bring you today's webinar. Our goal is to provide an overview of the recently created federal and state programs to assist small businesses during the coronavirus outbreak. As mentioned, I'd like to remind our participants that you'll be muted during the webinar. However, you can submit questions using the webinar chat feature at the bottom of your screen. Those questions will be answered to the best of our ability by the Baltimore Development Corporation and sent to participants as soon as possible. Additional tools to see the speaker bios, presentation slides, and access online resources can also be found at the bottom of center of your screen. I would like to thank our speakers for taking the time out of their very busy schedules to provide this critical information. Today, you will hear from U.S. Senator Ben Cardin, who will provide an overview of the small business aspects of the CARES Act. Stephen Umberger of the U.S. SBA Baltimore District Office will present on the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program. And finally, Kelly Schultz, Maryland Department of Commerce Secretary, will present on the new commerce programs announced last week. We also expect to be joined by Mayor Jack Young of Baltimore City to provide a few remarks. I understand he'll be calling in the immediate future. But for now, I'd like to get started and thank Senator Cardin so much for his leadership and his time today in creating the CARES Act. And with that, I will turn it over to you, Senator.
Well, Colin, thank you very much. I want to thank BDC and M&T Bank for hosting this opportunity for small businesses to learn more about what's in the CARES Act. And I want to thank you all for participating in this. It's extremely important we get information out as to what is in the CARES Act, particularly as it relates to small business. So let me start by saying the CARES Act passed the United States Senate by a vote of 96-0. That should tell you something about the urgency of this matter. It's a $2 trillion package. And just to put this in context, $2 trillion is equal to a full year of appropriations by the federal government for both defense and non-defense purposes. So this is the largest single relief package ever passed by the Congress of the United States. The first priority is the public health of the people of this country. There's a Marshall Plan in here to build up what we need to deal with COVID-19, as well as to prepare this nation for these challenges in the future. So it's critically important that we get beyond this virus. The best thing we can do for small businesses and for our economy is get people confident enough and from a public health point of view to be able to go out and build our economy. I want to talk about the small business provisions because that's the purpose of this call, and I was directly involved in developing that package along with Senator Rubio, the Republican chair of the committee from Florida. The two of us have been working on this package well before the bill was announced by Senator McConnell, the majority leader of the Senate. It contains unprecedented help for small business. 3 new tools are now available to help small businesses. They're generally defined at under 500 employees. There's some exceptions to that that you can find information out about. I'll refer to this as a guide that can really help you answer a lot of questions. On my website, you can find the Small Business Owner's Guide to the CARES Act. And it goes into detail, a lot of the information we'll be talking about today. But it'll give you the information and the links to important services in order to take advantage of these new tools. There are basically 3 new tools that are under Small Business Administration for small businesses. They total $377 billion. That's with a B, $billion. It's unprecedented, these new tools that are made available. We have what's known as the Paycheck Protection Program, which is a program that is run through our banking institutions, financial services, the existing 7A lenders, as well as other banks that will now be participating in the 7A program. This is a loan program, but it is basically a grant because the loan can be forgiven if it's used for the approved expenses. This is where you can borrow up to 2.5 times your pre-coronavirus monthly payroll. is for 8 weeks of payroll, and the extra 0.5 is for other expenses such as rents and utility. It allows you to make these payments, and you, at the end of the day, if you maintain a workforce comparable to what you had before the coronavirus, 100% of those loans are forgiven. There's no cost to these loans. The bank, there's 100% federal guarantee. Eligible are not only traditional small businesses, but nonprofits. Although they're not eligible today for 7As, they are eligible for this program. So nonprofits are also eligible. Self-employed individuals are eligible. So this is a new program that we hope will allow small businesses to maintain their workforce, which is very important. It's hard for a small business to try to regroup and rehire employees. This allows you to keep your employees so we have a paycheck rather than having to go on unemployment insurance. Although I must say unemployment insurance is also bolstered greatly under the CARES Act. I had a conversation today with Administrator Carranza, who is the administrator of the Small Business Administration. They're moving aggressively with private banks to get information out, hopefully by the end of this week, on how these loans will be obtained. They're obtained through the commercial banks that you deal with a 7A loan. The second program is a major improvement in the EIDL program, the Emergency Grant Program administered by the Small Business Administration. And I understand Steve Umberger will talk more specifically about this program, but this is up and running, and it's done on the website. It's controlled by the Small Business Administration. These grants are available as a result of the coronavirus, as any other disaster loan will be available. But we brought in a new feature to this loan. First of all, we've made it a lot easier on the credit scores, and the application process is going to be simplified. But we now allow for a grant of up to $10,000 to help those businesses that need an immediate influx of cash. That $10,000 is a grant. It's not a loan. There's no requirements for repayment. It would be subtracted from your payroll protection program. So if you also in that program, this $10,000, up to $10,000 advancement would be subtracted from your loan forgiveness. But it does give you immediate access to cash. And then the third program that is provided here is those who have 504, 7A, or existing SBA loans. We have provided a 6-month waiver of payments under those loans. They're forgiven. The interest and principal for those 6-month periods are forgiven on existing 7A, 504, and SBA loans, and for those that are taken out within the next 6 months. So there are 3 new tools that are available under the bills that passed the Congress. There are other provisions that can affect small businesses. For example, there is a employee retention credit under the IRS that where you can get a credit up to 50% per employee for employees that you retain or bring back to work. It is up to $10,000 of wages, so $5,000 credit. If you use that program, you cannot use the payroll protection program. So there are other tools available. These are all coordinated. And once again, I'll refer to my website, the Small Business Owner's Guide to the CARES Act. I think you'll find that information very helpful in trying to answer some questions that are not answered today. I want to compliment the Small Business Administration. They're really working hard on this. By the way, on the emergency grant, that has to be done within 3 days of your application, so we're talking about a very fast turnaround time. I'm impressed that the administrator has indicated that she intends to meet these guidelines. They hope to be up and running very, very shortly, and we want to make sure that we get the help out as quickly as possible to the small business community. I'm sure you have questions, and I'm sure we're not going to answer them all today, but we want to make sure that you get the information you need in order to apply. So for the loan forgiveness, it's the 7A lenders, and we're expanding those numbers. For the emergency grants, it's the SBA on their web page. And if you have questions, please let us know.
This is Colin Tarbert again from Baltimore Development Corporation. Senator Cardin, thank you so much for joining us today. I know you have a lot of work ahead of you and that you're working tirelessly to make sure small businesses get back on their feet as quickly as possible. So once again, thank you for joining us.
And I'll make sure that Steve answers any questions you might have. He's the expert, the director of our Baltimore office, and he's really done a great job to help the people of our region.
Hey, Senator Cardin, before you leave, this is Mayor Young. I want to thank you for joining us today. You have been a huge partner for Baltimore, along with our other federal members of Team Maryland. And I just want to thank you for all of your help, because you know that our small businesses in Baltimore are the backbone of our local economy, and we have to do everything in our power to help them weather the storm caused by COVID-19. That's why almost 2 weeks ago I worked with the Hogan administration to ask them to apply for the federal assistance for our small businesses. And today's call is another step to help our small businesses. So I'm just happy that you have been a huge leader and a huge partner for Baltimore, along with our other federal members of Team Maryland. So I just wanted to say thank you before you got off the call.
Well, Mayor Young, thank you for those comments, and thank you. Your staff has been incredibly helpful to us in putting together this package. We've had the businesses of Baltimore in mind as we crafted these programs, and your staff has been very, very helpful in dealing with this. We want people to know, we know there's a state program that's available for much smaller businesses, those under 50. There's no, you can do both state and federal in your help for your small business. However, you can't use the same monies for the same purposes, so you have to make sure that is coordinated. But I really want to thank people at City Hall for their help in crafting this, and Mayor, thank you for your extraordinary leadership during these very, very troubling times. We want everybody to stay safe, and you've been a great leader in making sure we keep the people of Baltimore as safe as we can. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator. And Colin, thank you as well for all that you do to make sure that our small businesses in Baltimore are taken care of. I just want to thank everybody that's on the call.
Great, and thank you, Mayor Young, for taking the time to join us. I know you have a lot on your plate, and you're doing a terrific job in working through this crisis as we move forward.
All right, thank you.
So with that, I'd like to go ahead and introduce Stephen Umberger. Steve is the Small Business Administration's District Director for Baltimore, and he's going to present on SBA's programs that they've rolled out in light of COVID-19. So with that, Steve?
Well, thank you very much, Colin. I'm glad to be here with everyone. We have had quite a tumultuous week and a half here, excuse me, since the IDL program rolled out in Maryland. And I want to thank Secretary Schultz and her team for working very closely with my office and making sure that all of Maryland was included under this program. And we did that pretty quickly and in unity, and so appreciate all their efforts and support. But everyone that's joined us today, appreciate it. And Colin, I appreciate the opportunity to be here, so thank you for that. We all know this is a very difficult time for all our small businesses and everyone in general, and never have we experienced a disaster of this magnitude. Our SBA Office of Disaster Assistance is working tirelessly to assist small businesses across the nation, across our state in particular, who are seeking economic injury disaster assistance. SBA district offices are stepping up to support our district or our disaster staff, but we ask for your patience with both the technology and personnel. And like I said, it's a trying time for everybody involved. But one thing I'm pleased to report, we have had some hiccups with our economic injury disaster loan processing system since it was put into operation to handle the large number of applicants that have come since it was first announced in Maryland. And shortly after Maryland came to the country, so we had hundreds of thousands of applications, very trying times. SBA has partnered most recently with a very strong private fintech company, come in and streamline that application further. We've had some hiccups, and the system was shut down last week, a day or two. but now we're up, we're quicker, we're better, we're easier to use, and better suited to handle the unprecedented volume of applications coming in. Two of the programs I'll talk about, one of the senator mentioned the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Advance, the $10,000 advance, and the major program known as EIDL as an acronym. We have an acronym for everything. The Economic Injury Disaster Loan. All EIDL, SBA EIDL loans come directly from our agency. It's a disaster appropriation. There's plenty of funding there for everyone. They can be used to pay fixed expenses, payroll, accounts payable, other bills that can't be paid because of the impact of this COVID-19. They cannot be used to refinance existing debt. They're low-interest, long-term loans up to $2 million. First payment on the loan, when approved, is deferred for a 12-month period, so you won't be paying your initial payment till that 13th month following. This is meant to be, has been made available to ease the burden and get the money to where it needs to be used. They carry a fixed interest rate of 3.75%, and maturity is 30 years. Long-term, low burden on your cash flow when there is a cash flow, no burden on your cash flow initially. So we think that we've really designed a good program to help, and I believe that if you haven't looked at it already, you need to look at it. The Economic Injury Disaster Loan Advance is now available for up to $10,000 to use for other things like payroll and other operating expenses, and it will quickly provide much-needed capital up front, and we're talking within 3 days of approval. The advance does not need to be repaid under any circumstance. To apply for the EID or the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Advance, you need to apply for the EIDL loan, and in the application process, you'll be asked, would you like that or not? And you check the block, and that automatically puts that into play. And if you're not sure, there are some eligibility with some private nonprofits and all small business self-proprietors. We've had questions back and forth over the past couple weeks, and as far as eligibility, but our advice is apply. If you don't know, just get in there and apply. Get yourself into the queue, get through the process, and let us take it from there. We talked about a little bit earlier about the CARES Act and other different SBA programs that are going to be involved, and our office and our headquarters folks in particular, our policy writers, have been working around the clock feverishly to get these policies, these procedures, guidelines in place, and we do anticipate them to be out by the end of this week. They're working through the weekend 24/7. I believe the Act calls for a 14-day period for SBA to get that guidance out. That nobody's watching that 14-day period. We want it out sooner, and we expect it to be out by the end of the week. A couple of words of caution. There are some folks that are trying to take advantage of small business owners, individuals applying for these loans, trying to charge fees for assistance in making the application. There's no reason for that, for you to pay any fee to anybody. There are no fees related that apply to the SBA EIDL loan. And once you get into that application process as it exists today, I think you'll find that it's very simple, straightforward. Check the blocks and get a quick response. One thing that you will notice through the application process, when you submit, you should receive a confirmation and a confirmation identification number. Keep it handy. You'll need it for when you are following up to find status, and you can find that status online through the same portal that you made application. It'll be a real-time status update, so you should be able to keep track of your application throughout the entire process. If you have any questions or concerns, I encourage you to contact my office or one of our SBA resource partners, our direct resource partners funded by the agency, funded by the federal government, the Small Business Development Centers, and SCORE. And you can find any contact information you're looking for at our local website of sba.gov/MD. You can follow us on Twitter at SBA_Baltimore for real-time updates. And I would just thank everybody for being here today. Thank you for having me. We are located right downtown in Baltimore. When we're downtown in Baltimore, everyone's teleworking, connected by webs, by our laptops, by our telephones. Our local number rings to everyone, so we're easy to get to. And I wish you would contact us if you have any questions. Thank you, Colin, the Baltimore Development Corp, your team, for hosting this. M&T Bank, Augie, our number one SBA lender in Baltimore, in Maryland, in the entire Mid-Atlantic region. We are blessed with you and enjoy working with you closely. And Senator Cardin, in particular, and the Senate Small Business Committee, your dedication to American entrepreneurs and your support of SBA is very, very much appreciated, and thank you all.
Thank you, Stephen. Really appreciate your time today. We do have a few minutes, so not to put you on the spot, but I did want to just ask a few of the questions that we've gotten multiple questions from our participants on if you can apply for multiple programs. And so one specific question is, can you apply for the Paycheck Protection Program as well as the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program? Would you be able to answer that?
Yes, you can. You can apply. My recommendation is apply for the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program now. It's what's available. Get yourself into the queue and move that forward. When the guidance comes out on the payroll or the Paycheck Protection Program later this week, I'm kind of sticking my neck out there. I know that's, but that's what the goal is by Friday. That's what I've been told. So once that guidance comes out, and even before, you can get to your lender. Your lender of account's always the best course of action initially. But if you find terms or conditions or any other items related to that program that may be more attractive to you and more beneficial for your business, you can certainly, do not have to accept the EIDL approval once granted. You can apply for all of them, whatever best suits you. That's the way you go.
And just one other question. Can you clarify, so certain programs under the COVID-19 Act are being administered through SBA lenders in essentially the private sector, and some are being administered by SBA directly. Can you just clarify which ones are which?
Sure. The one loan that SBA, the one loan with, I would call it a subset with the $10,000 advance, Economic Injury Disaster Loan, that is direct funding through the Small Business Administration. All other loan programs as a result of the CARES Act will be administered through commercial lenders, non-bank lenders, and others that do business with SBA on a regular basis. So our 7A program, if you will, and our 504 program were mentioned a little bit earlier. They're all done through conventional lending institutions with SBA's guarantee. That's where when you heard 100% guarantee, that's not typical for SBA. On a regular basis, any day, anywhere, SBA guarantees loans up to a certain percentage. Under this pandemic, this unprecedented scenario that we're in now, SBA is increasing that loan to 100% for the lenders to get the money to the businesses that need it. Is that clear?
Great. Thank you so much, Stephen. Appreciate that.
Sure.
We have had lots of questions from the audience that, again, we're going to try our best to answer in the coming days. There have been a couple questions about websites and where to find some of this information. If you Google the U.S. Senate Committee on Small Business and Entrepreneurship, you'll find their main page, and on that website, there's a guide to the CARES Act, which Senator Cardin referred to, and we'll do our best to get that link out to everyone on this webinar. I did want to note that the Baltimore Development Corporation also put out a small business survey pretty early in the process. We've received over 600 responses. Many of you took part in that survey, which is how you got invited to this webinar. And we'll also push information out through that listserv, as well as to sign up for this webinar. We're going to check to see if our final speaker is on the line. Maryland Department of Commerce Secretary Kelly Schultz. I'm not sure if she's joined us. She was to join us at around 2:30. Terrific.
She has joined me.
Well, with that, we can hear you, and I'm very pleased that you could join us today. I know you have a very tight schedule, and we're able to accommodate our time. And want to thank you for your leadership and the governor's leadership and all that you're doing to lead us through this pandemic, and would invite you to talk about the programs that you rolled out last week and how those apply to small businesses.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And I really appreciate the invitation to come and talk to this group. Obviously, being able to have communications, direct communications with all of our stakeholders is extremely important. And we've been extremely busy. So being able to take some time just to talk to groups of individuals has been a big part of how I'm trying to spend my days to alleviate some concerns that people might have. So, Colin, you had talked a bit about some resources, some online resources for people to view. And I want everybody to be able to know that they can go to our portal that was put up through a variety of different agencies. You can go to Maryland Business Express. That's Maryland Business Express. You just Google that, you'll find it. And at the top of the page, there will be a link to a portal for coronavirus or COVID-19 with all information for businesses. And there's a variety of different topics on there, obviously some about the governor's orders and with direction. It has links to all of the portals for his executive orders and his interpretive guidance that's gone out. Some information about the essential versus non-essential hot topic, and then obviously the Department of Commerce funds, the federal funds, Department of Labor, and everything that they're doing and what they have to offer. And so I just think it's really it's a great resource for all of the businesses to be able to kind of have a one-stop shop to see where kind of the stuff at the state level is. And then if you can't find what you need on that, we have set up a email address that a variety of people from multiple agencies are going and answering questions all day, every day. And that is secretary.commerce@maryland.gov. Again, that's secretary.commerce@maryland.gov. So specifically, I guess I'll just talk about those types of opportunities that we have at the Department of Commerce. And I'm sure everybody has heard that last Monday, so I can't believe it's been over a week, I guess. It seems like it was just yesterday. But the governor announced $175 million going into a relief package for small businesses. So we at the Department of Commerce have set up 3 active programs right now. I can tell you that the two programs, the one loan program and the grant program, we've received almost 20,000 applications. We had to reinvent overnight, basically, a new IT system in order to be able to handle the breadth of the amount that is coming in. I give huge kudos to the whole team at the Department of Commerce and the Department of Information and Technology, everybody working together with some vendors to get a really, really good quality and fast-acting system for us to be able to manage this process through. The first is a $75 million loan fund, and that is for businesses up to 50 people, and they can request up to $50,000. It's a 0% interest loan for the first 12 months, and after that it amortizes to a 36-month loan with a 2% interest moving forward on that. The second is a relief grant fund, and this has $50 million in the fund, and it offers up to $10,000 to businesses and nonprofits with 50 or fewer employees. Both of these programs, the grants can be used to provide anything from working capital to covering payroll, rent, mortgage payments, utilities, and any other expenses that they may have occurred during this period of time. The other program is something that we're looking at, or that we funded with $5 million, called the Maryland COVID-19 Emergency Relief Manufacturing Fund. And this is in response to the nationwide shortage of medical and personal protective equipment our doctors and hospitals badly need, like face masks and ventilators and other types of equipment. The Department of Commerce is working with our partners in the industry, including the Maryland Manufacturing Extension Partnership, the Regional Manufacturing Institute of Maryland, the Maryland Manufacturing Advisory Board, TEDCO, and others that we have put together to create an advisory board to look at these applications as they come in for this fund. They are eligible to receive up to $100,000 as a grant to be used for additional equipment or possibly employee training in order to be able to retrofit their existing operations so that they can quickly and efficiently start making some of these critical items that is needed by the healthcare industry and our emergency management team and first responders. There is other resources I think that is very important for people to know. At MEMA, the Maryland Emergency Management Agency, there are also teams of people from different agencies, including the Department of Commerce, Department of General Services, the Department of Health, that are working together to be able to identify existing resources in the state that may be utilized in order to be able to handle these critical needs as well. And for anybody that thinks that they may have a resource that can be utilized quickly, you can send an email to resource.mema, M-E-M-A, at maryland.gov. That's resource.mema@maryland.gov. So our groups of individuals are there looking and vetting companies and making sure that they have viable offers and viable resources in order to be able to be sent along to DGS for possible procurement. And I think that we're making some good strides in identifying some Maryland businesses who are able to help. I think it's just really important for everybody to understand that we're hearing, just like you are, from many, many businesses that are frightened and unsure of what to do and how to move forward. They want to keep serving their customers. We want them to keep serving their customers. We want them to continue paying for their employees. But there is a time when people feel as if they can't do that. And we understand that this is a difficult time. We want to be able to be here to help and be able to talk about and list the services and the resources that are available at all levels, at the federal, state, and local level. And I think that when we do that, we're going to get through this terrible, horrible time, but we'll get through it together. And I just thank you for allowing me to share this information with all of you.
Great. Thank you so much, Secretary, for your time. We really appreciate you being with us. If you can stay with us, I did have a few questions that have been popping up. Not to put you on the spot, if you don't have an answer, we totally understand. But one question Steve, if you're still on the line, feel free to jump in from the SBA side. But my question is do these programs help sole proprietors and individuals who might not have employees? And I think the answer is in most cases yes. But could you just touch on that?
Well, in our two programs at the Department of Commerce, one of the requirements, unfortunately, is that they have employees. So there was a very important and very difficult decision that we had to make in order to be able to work with those employers that had employees to come back to work and to be able to make sure that we reach those employees. But there are other resources, and at SBA, one, and I know the CARES Act, and we have been working with those individuals that have reached out to us for additional assistance to be able to find those other resources, like the new PPP program. That's going to be a big help.
Great. Steve, if you're still on, did you want to touch on which programs?
Yeah, I'm here. It's Steve, and sole proprietors are, yes, in fact, eligible for any of the programs that exist right now. And the EIDL, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, only one tip, I guess, if you will, if you get to the primary business address and you're a sole proprietor or a home-based business that works out of the residential address, that's the one you put in there. But all other programs, as they come forward from the CARES Act and the guidance provided, will be through the lending institutions, and they can make loans with the SBA guarantees to sole proprietors.
Great. Thank you for those answers. Two related questions that have been coming up on the chat room here is, one, are there any deadlines that people need to be aware of for applying for these programs? And then the follow-up question is, for those who have applied, and this is probably a difficult one to answer, when do you think that they'll hear back on these various programs? Maybe we'll start with Secretary Schultz.
Sure. Well, we're hoping that we start getting out all of our funds as soon as today, as soon as we start this process that I had spoken about with the new IT process. All of that is put in place, and our volunteer team from the other agencies are put into place. We had kind of used a guide and for how long did it take for SBA loans, a typical SBA loan previous to kind of get funneled through their system and their processes, and we had heard that it was roughly average about a 21-day. We're hoping to beat that. It's been a week. I know that it seems like it's a really long time for people to be waiting, but we're trying to make sure that everybody is patient to know that we're moving as quickly as we possibly can. The other, as far as defined end dates, I can't provide that to you right now. We have not taken the application down. I know that the Department of Labor, when they went through their funding for one of their programs, they did take on Friday their application down off of their website. And because the CARES Act did get passed and there is funding for additional unemployment insurance and employee protection, that they are they're looking at addressing the questions from their constituency with the programs from the CARES Act.
Thank you, Secretary. Stephen, do you think you could touch on if there are any existing deadlines that small businesses need to be aware of, and two, when they might actually see funding?
No existing deadlines, and what I think I might have heard a challenge there with the 21-day turnaround. But right now, I will tell you this: I have to stick with the Economic Injury Disaster Loan program. Approvals are uploaded mid-afternoon every day to Treasury, who disperses the funds. The priority is getting out the advance monies immediately, within 24 hours, I've been told. Now, I have not double-checked that process, but that's where SBA's priority is, in getting the advance money out. Obviously, there's a little more underwriting involved, although most of the loan requirements have been very, very much relaxed. I think we're safe to say a 21-day period is good, but we're always trying to do better.
Great. Thank you for that answer, and we understand the challenges. And then I think just the final question before we wrap was there are questions about the federal versus state programs and if any of those sort of disqualify one if you apply for it. So to the extent the question is which programs can be combined and which programs may disqualify you from applying for another. Maybe we'll start with Secretary Schultz just to see if any of the state programs, if applied for, prohibit you from applying for any federal aid.
There is no question on our application process or vetting review to ask anybody if they have applied for any other additional programs.
Terrific. So if they're eligible for a Maryland Commerce program, their best bet is to apply for it.
Yes.
And Stephen, on your end, are there any restrictions if they've applied for state funds or other federal funds that would prohibit them from taking part in any of the programs we've discussed today?
Every day is a different day for us. The rules are changing and the guidelines being relaxed. At this point, I'm not aware of any. And with the guidance that comes out by the end of the week, I think we're going to find I don't see that anything's going to change. There are some limitations on the ceilings that pre-existed that will probably change by the end of the week as far as the dollar amount that any individual entity could qualify for under total SBA financing. Being disaster, being regular 7A, 504, there's a number of different, but there was a ceiling. I don't know if that's going to be relaxed, but right now that's at $10 million. So we're talking about a lot of small businesses, 99+% of them in the state that are under 100 employees. So those numbers are a little bit of a stretch for most, if not a very high percentage of them, but no. We don't have any restrictions.
Great. Thank you so much for that. And I know there's been a lot of letters like PPP program and other acronyms that have been said. Again, just a reminder, we are partnering with M&T to conduct this webinar, and our goal is to, we have recorded it, and the goal is to be able to provide this as a link to people who might want to go back and re-listen to different aspects of it. We've also received lots of questions and comments that our team at Baltimore Development Corporation will do our best to review and answer either internally or with our partners and send out FAQs. We will likely post that on www.baltimoretogether.com, which is the site that BDC has set up to disseminate information to the Baltimore business community. So please visit that site and bookmark it and check it often, along with the Maryland Department of Commerce's website and SBA.gov. And with that, I think we're going to go ahead and conclude. In order to do so, I'd like to turn it over to Augie Tissera, who is the Baltimore Development Corporation Board Chair and also the Regional President for M&T Bank in the Baltimore region. With that, Augie?
Hey, Colin, thank you very much. As we heard today, it's going to take the combined efforts of federal, state, and local leadership to really address the impact of COVID-19 on our Maryland-based businesses. And the Baltimore Development Corporation, as you know, Colin, is dedicated to bring these resources together to assist any business through these difficult times. On behalf of the Board of Directors of the Baltimore Development Corporation, we especially want to thank Senator Cardin, Secretary Schultz, Mayor Young, and Steve Umberger for their participation today and the information you shared. It was incredibly helpful. And finally, a special thanks to Colin Tarbert, Ben Siegel, Susan Young, John Brock, and Will Beckford for organizing today's call. And Colin, a special thanks to you and the entire BDC team for what you do every day in our communities to support small businesses and economic development in our community.
As Colin mentioned, a recorded version of this session will be available on the BDC website, along with answers to your many questions from today. You can find that at baltimoretogether.com. Thanks again for joining us today, and we hope to see you again soon. Take care.